Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're skipping all the emotional family debates and we are running the cold, hard math on renting versus buying over a full 30-year horizon. We're going to let the actual numbers decide who builds wealth over a lifetime. You know, your parents might swear you need to buy a house, while the internet insists you should just rent and invest the difference. But today, we're setting aside the vibes, the personal anecdotes, and all that stress of home inspections, and we're looking strictly at the data.
Literally everyone has an opinion on real estate based on gut feelings and internet advice, right? But we're going to track every single dollar for decades to reveal the invisible forces that are actually at play here. You see, the real problem with the classic rent versus buy debate is that almost nobody looks past that very first monthly payment. We anchor these massive, life-altering financial decisions to whatever leaves our bank account on day one. But to truly understand who wins, we need to let the numbers run over a much, much longer time frame. We're factoring in everything: rent increases, mortgage interest, property taxes, maintenance, home appreciation, and stock market returns. The whole shebang.
All right, let's set the stage. Meet Jake and Marcus. They both make $55,000 a year, they live in the exact same mid-sized city, and importantly, they both have exactly $60,000 sitting in the bank. So Jake decides to rent a 3-bedroom place for $1,400 a month, and he invests his entire $60,000 cash pile straight into an S&P 500 index fund. Marcus, on the other hand, buys a $300,000 home. He puts his $60,000 down as a 20% down payment and takes out a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.5%. Right out of the gate, Marcus is paying about $1,900 a month when you factor in taxes and insurance, while Jake is paying just $1,400. So, on day one, Jake absolutely looks like the smartest guy in the room.
In year one, Marcus's base mortgage payment comes out to $1,517 monthly. But what nobody tells you, or at least they don't say it loud enough, is that a staggering amount of his first-year payments goes straight to the bank as vanishing interest, not equity. People love to say that renting is just throwing your money away. Well, when you look at Marcus's first year, he pays about $18,200 total in mortgage payments, but only $2,800 of that actually chips away at his principal loan balance. The rest, a massive $15,400 in year one alone, literally vanishes into thin air as interest. So in year one, Marcus isn't really building equity. He's basically just paying the bank to build theirs.
Okay, let's dive into this early reality. For those first 3 years, Jake's minimal living costs and his quietly compounding 8% index fund absolutely crush Marcus. While Jake is sitting back on the couch letting his landlord pay for a broken furnace or a leaky roof, Marcus is drowning. He's getting hit with property taxes, a $9,000 sinkhole for closing costs, and midnight plumbing disasters. Marcus has to budget 1 to 2% of his home's value every single year just to keep the place from falling apart. By the end of year 3, Jake's untouched investment has grown to roughly $75,600, while Marcus has barely even made a dent in his mortgage principal. Honestly, if the story just stopped at year 3, renting is the undisputed champion, no question.
But here is where the quiet shift begins. Jake's rent is a variable cost, meaning it's pretty much always going up. If we assume a conservative 3.5% annual increase, it acts kind of like a backpack, where a heavy pebble is added every single month. Year over year, Jake barely even notices it. An extra $56 a month at his first renewal, that doesn't make him panic. But over time, man, those pebbles add up. By year 10, that comfortable $1,400 rent is approaching $1,900. By year 20, it's over $2,500. You don't really notice the first 50 pebbles, but by pebble 200, you are completely hunched over.
And check out the contrast as the decades roll on. While inflation slowly makes Marcus's fixed $1,517 payment feel almost cheap by year 20, Jake's costs are just spiraling out of control. Marcus will pay that exact same principal and interest number on month 1, month 120, and month 360. Rent, on the other hand, only ever trends in one direction, up. A fixed-rate mortgage is this brilliant fixed cost that inflation actively erodes over decades. What felt like a huge, heavy burden to Marcus in year 1 feels like a literal rounding error by year 30.
So, right around year 6, the math completely reverses in Marcus's favor, and it's all thanks to a hidden mechanical advantage called leverage. This is absolutely crucial. It's the single biggest advantage homeowners have over renters, and it almost never gets brought up when people are arguing about monthly payments. Leverage allows Marcus to control a massive, appreciating asset using only a fraction of his own money. Remember, he didn't pay $300,000 cash for the house. He only put down $60,000, but he gets to keep the growth on the entire value of the property.
Let's break down what that actually looks like in practice. When Marcus's house goes up just 3.5% in a year, That is $10,500 in pure appreciation. But because he only used $60,000 of his own cash to get it, his effective return isn't 3.5%, it's 17.5%. Jake is getting a very solid, respectable 8% in the stock market, sure. But because he has no leverage, no multiplier effect going on, he only earns returns on the money he directly deposited.
Let's check the scoreboard at year 10, because that compounding leverage completely rewrites the game. Despite massive cash outflows for maintenance, taxes, and interest, Marcus is now ahead by up to $60,000 in net wealth, purely through forced equity and appreciation. Jake has spent over $193,000 in rent, owning absolutely nothing tangible, while his investments sit at about $129,500. Marcus, he spent significantly more cash off the door, around $285,000, but his home has appreciated and his mortgage balance has dropped, leaving him with $170,000 in solid equity. The compounding power of an appreciating leveraged asset is now leaving the renter totally in the dust.
Fast forward to year 30, and honestly, the gap is just devastating. Marcus makes his final mortgage payment and gets to live nearly for free in a $700,000 home, paying maybe $600 a month just for taxes and insurance. Meanwhile, Jake is writing $3,370 checks to a landlord for the rest of his natural life. A mortgage has a finish line. There's a literal date circle on the calendar where the bulk of your housing payment just disappears. For renting, there is no month 361 where the payment stops. When you're 70, living on a fixed retirement income, your rent is dramatically higher than when you were 35, and it never ever stops.
But hey, let's be real for a second and look at the fine print. Jake's renting strategy has one massive catch. It only works if he possesses the iron discipline to actually invest every single saved dollar for 3 decades without ever inflating his lifestyle. And let's face it, that is a rarity in the real world. In theory, Jake diligently takes the $500 he saves each month over Marcus and puts it right into the stock market. In reality, that extra budget gets absorbed by a nicer car, a well-earned vacation, or buying a new couch because it was on sale. A mortgage is essentially a forced savings account. Every single month, whether you feel like it or not, part of your payment builds your net worth. Renting? That requires you to be perfectly disciplined entirely on your own.
That being said, buying isn't always the undisputed winner for everyone. Renting is mathematically the smarter move if you plan to move within 5 years, if you live in an astronomically expensive city, or if you just need career mobility. Closing costs on the way in and agent commissions on the way out mean that if you buy a house and sell it 3 years later, you are almost certainly taking a loss. Also, in places like Manhattan or San Francisco, the price-to-rent ratio is so extreme that the opportunity cost of tying up a massive down payment just doesn't make any mathematical sense.
So the real trap isn't simply choosing to rent or buy. The trap is making a massive, lifelong financial decision based entirely on month one's payment. Renting can be a brilliant financial strategy, but only if it's deliberate, paired with aggressive investing, and run over a really long horizon. Buying builds incredible wealth, yes, but it demands hefty upfront costs and endless maintenance. So think about this. The next time your lease goes up by just 4%, and you brush it off because it feels like practically nothing, ask yourself, have you actually run the numbers on what that will cost you over a lifetime?